Hi everybody, welcome to another video of Game of Thrones Academy. Hi Tamar.
Hello.
As usual, we're going to look at A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones through the lens of history, real politics. and stay tuned for our bold prediction later in this video about dragons. So talk a little bit about the dragons.
So the dragons in the story, not the real historical dragons.
Or the real dragons that we have now.
First of all, of course, they are magical creatures. And it's an important element
Why?
in their character.
Okay.
They are the harbinger of magic, they are pure magic, they are fire in flesh. They came from Valeria, and they have some connection to the fire-spitting volcanoes there. The Valerians were able to control them in some magical way and use them as a tool inside the story. They use them as a weapon of mass destruction, as a game-changing weapon, which helped them build a 1,000-year empire or something like that.
Once the dragon were born, there was this fallen star in the skies, and magic started coming back. And not only for the dragons, but also the White Walkers and the Red Priests and the alchemists and the warlocks. Everybody's magic got stronger. George R. R. Martin, of course, didn't invent the concept of dragons. There's a long history of dragon folklore in real human history.
In the European medieval folklore, there were usually fire-breathing, winged creature, evil monsters that protected a cave.
Like Smog.
And you have this hero that needed to slay them. One of the first, if not the first, English literature that we have is Beowulf.
I am Beowulf!
The story about a king of the Geats.
Geats?
Geats. It ends with him slaying a dragon that lived in a cave and protected this treasure. We have a famous story from the romances of the Middle Ages about St. George, a warrior that came to a village plagued by a dragon, the evil dragon. He slew the dragon, released the village, then the village became Christians, the people became Christians.
Happy story! You can also see dragons in the Viking mythology, and of course there's the Chinese dragon, which is very, very different, more of a scary, happy
he's nice.
Serpent. Doesn't have legs even.
Yeah.
So the dragons in the stories are different from the dragon that you portrayed from medieval times, living in a cage, in a cave and protecting the treasure. Here in A Song of Ice and Fire, they serve a totally different purpose.
Yeah. There are weapons. Game-changing weapons that can settle a huge battle quickly. It's not only they are spitting fire and burning everything, but you also have a major panic attack.
That's very vivid
effect.
in the books.
So it's sort of like a psychological part of a psychological warfare. You need one dragon or 3 dragons to win an entire field of battle with 40,000 soldiers.
I think the psychological effect also we can see it with Daenerys, even though her dragons are small. The psychological effect that she has those dragons.
If you control the dragons, you have a much more powerful army.
So dragons, they created basically the Valyrian Empire were a weapon of enslavement, and then Aegon the Conqueror used them to conquer Westeros and unite Westeros.
They were a tool for creating order as well, you can say that.
And when this weapon died, they became disorder, chaos, civil wars, and now the dragons are back.
Draco.
Okay, and that brings us to this video's bold prediction. This is a great bold prediction, What do you think will happen to the dragons in the story?
So, if I read this story as an historical novel in which all of the beliefs and superstition of the people are basically true, dragons are a problem you need to solve.
Why?
They are a problem you need to solve.
Why?
The story
It was
in the romances, which in some cases was a part of this national story of emerging nation in Europe. The dragons are usually a problem you need to solve in order to make the world normal.
So if we're reading it like this, the dragons have to die.
What do you mean the dragons will die? They're basically part of this whole Game of Thrones phenomena is because of the dragons, and the dragons are growing, and their power is growing.
Yes, they are very powerful, but their power is like a double-edged sword.
Dragons were part of the reasons the Valerian fell. The dragons came from the volcanoes, and they dig inside
Right.
more and more and more.
Fire.
They needed the fire, yeah. So their addiction to this power, to this magical, uncontrollable power, was their demise. Okay. And Aegon,
No,
he
Aegon.
used it, but this order that Aegon created lasted 150 years until the Dance with the Dragons, and then the dragons were used again as a weapon, and they were all destroyed after
And they created all
a
this
lot
chaos.
of destruction and chaos and perpetual civil war. Every generation is plagued with civil war since then. So the dragons are our problem.
Okay, but Dany, she uses the dragons to free the slaves. She brings freedom to Slaver's Bay. So we should
But
root for the dragons.
Maybe Dany is starting to control her dragons. Spoiler alert.
One dragon.
One dragon,
And not even
maybe
controlling,
not even control it. More like being in symbiosis with it,
Right.
not control. And also, okay, so you will have these three dragons three riders that will ride the dragons. It's part of the prophecy.
Yeah.
But I always go back to this passage, to this dedication of George R. R. Martin. I can't remember which book it appeared. Thank you to something for convincing me to put in the dragons.
Right.
So when he started to write the story, he didn't have dragons in his mind.
It was more a historical novel then.
So this is another clue why the dragons have to die, because they weren't supposed to be there in the first place. He uses them as a tool, not as the essence in itself to the story.
And of course, we as readers and show watchers expect sometime that the dragons will be used as the ultimate weapon against the White Walkers and the others in this context of contest of ice and fire.
So after the fight between the dragons and the White Walkers, the dragons will die.
You cannot run a kingdom with an atomic weapon with a mind of its own.
Right.
If we say about the dragons, they are a weapon of mass destruction,
Right.
and we compare it to our known world about what we know about weapons of mass destruction.
Okay.
And the atomic bomb was the first time they used the atomic bomb, was the last time they used the
Right.
atomic bomb.
And even that was one
It
time
lives
too
now,
many.
the atomic bomb, like this nuclear threats, lives in the background, but it created like these 60 years of balance of terror. So we're now in a situation that every use of this weapon will be the end of the world. So these mutually assured destructions between nations ended the period of battles between empire states and battle between these huge superpowers.
So maybe
Direct
so,
conflicts.
so these weapons of mass destruction create order, maybe you could argue. So that's
Only-
unlike the dragons.
Our current game-changing weapons, which are the drones,
Okay.
you know, these fire-spitting winged dragons,
Yeah.
metal dragons. When the enemy will have drones of itself, of his own,
Of their own, right?
maybe they will stop using it then.
Maybe, yeah. Okay, so that bodes very badly for Daenerys if her dragons will die. After we talked about it, I'm pretty sure they'll die. It just has to happen. It makes sense. They start the story. They're born. They become a real weapon. They feel their purpose, and then that's it. They have no purpose left.
Yeah,
within
and
the-
as
for the
readers,
story.
it's not that new and foreign concept to us as readers. We started the story with no dragons.
Right?
So we started the story with no dragons. We know how this story is without dragons,
Yeah.
and maybe it will end with
Yeah,
no
yeah,
dragons.
yeah, I'm convinced. Okay, so if you think that the dragons will not die and that they have a different purpose to play in the stories, go ahead and comment. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe to get our next video. This has been a fun character breakdown of the dragons. And we'll see you next time, everybody. Bye bye.